Can you guys all hear me? Awesome. So today's design lecture, we're going to be going over finding inspiration in general in design, as well as building your portfolio, which I know a lot of you guys probably joined this class to kind of learn how to do. So let's first jump into finding inspiration. A lot of times I have a lot of people ask me, how do you get an eye for design? Well, the answer is you can't really have an eye for design because nothing really comes naturally. It's a gradual understanding of how current systems and a lot of times trends come in and go and work in the overall larger picture. The best way, whenever someone asks me like how to train your eye, is just with a lot of practice with design, diligence, discipline, and hard work. It's really easy to say. I know a lot of my friends say, oh, I'm not a good designer, I'm not a creative person. And it's really easy to fall into this. I don't know if you guys are into Enneagrams, but I'm pretty into it. It's like 9 different types of like personalities, I guess. And it's really easy to categorize humans like that. But when it comes to design, it's not as simple as like, oh, I'm just not good at it. I like to think of design as something that is constantly fluid, and I think everyone has their own unique way of designing things. And a lot of times it comes from your own personal background. So think of your childhood when you've probably painted before, whether it was what you call conventionally good or not, everyone has a creative flair to them. In terms of inspiration, it really only comes when you're actively seeking it. You can't really say like, oh, I'm not a good designer, but not actively pursue design, because then you're just staying exactly where you are. You can't just wait for it to hit you. You have to make the commitment even if you're busy, which I know as students, a lot of us, a lot of times just don't have the time to commit to extra design work. But if you are very interested in becoming a better designer, this is something that I personally think practice really does make better. If you look at the apps you use today, this is the Lyft app, for example, but a much older version of it. Have you guys ever thought like, why do they work? Why did the designer choose to design this way? Maybe it's just me, but I like to look at an app and think, oh, why did they choose to make the button here? Why did they choose to have it go up instead of down? For the Lyft app, for example, you can see the go button at the very bottom right corner, which we've talked about in previous lectures. Having buttons at the bottom of a mobile device makes it easier for your thumb to access. So everything is designed with a specific action or some kind of goal in mind that we want to accomplish. So in the case of the design here, you can kind of see everything has their own design or purpose, and a lot of times designers in industry will do research to back this. It's an example of intentionally bad design. I really like this website. It's called User Interface, but instead of a T, it's a Y, so it's like interface. And it's truly the most poorly designed website I've ever used on like purpose. So if you guys like want to like play around with it in your own free time, feel free. But essentially, it kind of takes you through like a sign up process that doesn't really do anything. But everything that this website does or like has is intentionally bad design. For example, the bad contrast color between the text, the green text, and the blue background, the no button instead of, and which kind of thing, you think like, oh, I'm gonna click the no button to move on to the next step, but it's actually like at the very bottom in the black text, which you probably can't even read. So it's a very interesting website if you want to see how bad design can be actually used. And it's a very clever website. So feel free to check that out in your own time. But I know a lot of times people are like, so how do you like think of something? Like when you're designing your website, like how do you think of where to put things? And this is a really clever or like cool infographic of how to look at the world like an artist. Every artist gets asked the question, where do you get your ideas? The honest artist answers, I steal them. So how does an artist look at the world? First, you figure out what is worth stealing, and then you move on to the next thing. If you think it's worth stealing, then you kind of look at it, you take parts of it that you like, and you move forward. So I will explain what this means. Essentially, it's not saying like copy like everything pixel for pixel, but rather kind of like a remix, like, you know, like DJ remixes, kind of like that. You're taking the original song and you're kind of putting your twist on it. in a way that is a little more authentic and original to you. I think it's really important to surround yourself with inspiration, things that you like. There's a lot of cool portfolios out there that I'm going to show in a little bit. And something I personally like to do is whenever I like a website, I either like bookmark it or like I take a screenshot of what I like about it and I save it in my Notion page, or people use Figma, whatever not. But I think it's really important that you keep track of the things that inspire you. So when you are actively working on your portfolio or designing something, you can take a look back at what you liked about these things and kind of draw aspects that you liked from them. And honestly, if you're new to design, when you're learning anything, you just need to keep doing it. And intuition is built a lot over consistent doing. Personally, I've like redesigned my portfolio 3 times over the past like few years. And I still feel like I'm like constantly redesigning it because it honestly makes me a better designer as well. But even so, be proud of your work, even if you know it's not the best it can be right now. With every iteration you make, it gets better, whether you think it or not, it really does. So, where do I find good design? These are some really like extensive, but there's definitely more, but these are really great resources. So there's mood boards, colors, gradients. I use coolors.co like all the time when I'm trying to find a good color palette. Dribbble.com is really great. You guys have used that in your homework assignments. And honestly, I really personally like, it's not on here, but Airbnb has really nice, like clean designs. I think they're one of like the forefronters of design in the tech industry. So you guys can take a look at their like pages and their app to see what their design is like. But yeah, all of this will be posted when slides get posted. But if you're interested in reading more about design, a theory behind it, there's a lot of cool websites for that. uxdesign.cc, designteam.io. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. And yes, you actually have to design. You can't just say, oh, I'm gonna design and not do it. But you're not alone. If you're ever interested in hearing from us about our designs, not all of us have a portfolio, but I personally do. So if you're ever interested to hear more about how to design one, feel free. But here's some examples of previous TAs as well as current ones. Kelly Hu is actually like, she's one of our TAs that does more of the back end stuff. I don't think you guys have ever met her, but she's a really, really talented product designer. She worked at Spotify this past summer, and I really love her portfolio. We'll go through it in the next section of the lecture, but if you are really interested in design, she's a great resource if you want to reach out to her and how she got started as well. I really enjoy this video called The Gap by Ira Glass. It's more of like, I guess, a poem slash like talk, like motivational talk, but this video, it's like 2 minutes. I won't show in class, but essentially the idea is when you first start off doing something, whether you're learning to play a new instrument, you're learning to design in this aspect, everything you make is kind of like you trying to be good rather it being good. The first time you pick up a guitar, the first chords you make aren't going to sound super pretty compared to someone who's been playing for multiple years. But and it's really easy to feel like discouraged when you first start out because you're feeling like, oh, everything I'm doing is just mediocre. It's not great. It's just whatever. But everyone has gone through like what this phase is called the gap. And essentially where you feel like there's a gap between you and someone who has a lot more experience than you, which kind of makes sense. You're not going to be as talented as someone who has years and years of experience under their belt. But that person who has years and years of experience under the belt also has gone through what we call the gap. And if you ever feel discouraged, watch this video. I think it's really motivational and you're not alone and you'll get through this gap with a lot of practice. You'll get better, surely, but slowly, and you'll eventually close that gap. And you can be that person that has years and years of experience under your belt. Now we'll get more onto actually building your portfolio. Disclaimer, I'm like not an expert at all. My design skills are something I also learned here in Web Design Decal as well as outside, but I'm no expert by any means. But I can kind of give you my 2 cents of what a design portfolio should include, and I can give you an example, which was Kelly Hu's. So what is a design portfolio? Essentially, it's a body of work that you're really proud of. Usually they're case studies, or perhaps just you redesigning something and you include them in your portfolio. And if you're recruiting for, let's say, a product design or UI UX, whatever not, role, this is what recruiters will look at in addition to your resume, because it'll actually show the work that you've done. And honestly, it's way more important than your resume if you are recruiting for a designing role. And it's really important that you let your personality and your little flair shine. So like I previously said, project case studies, whether that's user research, you focus on a problem, try to solve that, and kind of explain why you design certain things. You can also do redesigns of current websites that exist, and that could be put in your design portfolio. Another thing that is highly recommended in your design portfolio is an about me. I think it's very standard in any portfolio, not just a design portfolio, as well as a way to contact you, because how else are they gonna get reach out to you? So where do I put the portfolio? GitHub Pages, you guys are all using that right now to submit your homework assignments. Once you're done with this class, you can honestly just save all your homework assignments on GitHub. And then if you want, you can use your GitHub username.github.io as your portfolio website, which I personally do. And it's completely free. And I think it's a really great resource out there for those who want to get the portfolio out, but also don't want to pay money for a domain. But if you do want to just have that domain, I think it's pretty cool if you can have your name.com or whatnot. Then there's a lot of places out there. Webflow is a very standard one for designers. It's kind of the new up thing in the past few years. Wix is kind of more of the older thing, so it's Squarespace, but those are definitely great as well. PDF is acceptable but not recommended. I think there are better resources out there that are completely free. And Medium and Behance should be additions, not your main portfolio. So how do you kind of get started with building your portfolio? A lot of times people don't really know where to start. There's something called daily UI challenges, where essentially you can kind of redesign something as small as a button to, let's say, a home page. And these challenges really push people to keep designing, which, like I said previously, makes you a better designer. Unsolicited redesigns, it's like if you took Lyft, for example, you took their homepage and their UI and you redesigned it and reimagined it. That's an example of an unsolicited redesign. Product ideas, if you're ever thinking of making your own product and perhaps you're working with a friend who actually wants to build that product, you can literally be the designer for that and you can put that on your portfolio. Design class projects, I don't know if anyone's enrolled in design class right now. There's not that many, but those projects can also be added to your portfolio. Designathons, I know there's a few that a lot of the design clubs here at Berkeley host every year. There's a few. I did one last semester, I believe, with UCSB, and that was pretty fun. And Adobe Creative Jams, also kind of a daily UI challenge. Now the actual designing part. Some industry standards. Sketch is a really popular app used, but personally, I think Figma is kind of the new industry standard. When I worked at my internship this past summer, we mostly, I know the designers there use Figma a lot. For prototyping, Framer, Figma still use Adobe XD, InVision. And then for visual design, I think the Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop is very popular, as well as Procreate. So if you're thinking what do I redesign? Because there's honestly a billion things you could. Find something you really feel passionate about. I think the most important thing when you're trying to find, if let's say you're trying to find your first project to add to your design portfolio, try to find something you're really passionate about, whether that's sustainability, a fashion website, even a club you're a part of. You could literally redesign that. Find something that makes, this is a chance for people to see what you're like outside just typical case studies that you might see in someone's website. So think of a better UI for your favorite video game. You want to create visual interface for a list of your current reads. That's awesome. These are all things that is not exclusive. And yeah, if you have any more questions about what to redesign, you can also ask any of the TAs who can give you some ideas as well. For us designing in school, it's unfortunately very hard to get into design classes here at Berkeley. That is the one unfortunate thing. There's a lot of self-motivation that you need in order to keep going at it to be a better designer. But there are student orgs if you're interested in designing: BI, Berkeley Innovation, Design at Berkeley, Innovative Design, our web design decal, and honestly, any club that needs web/graphic/mobile design work, even if it's not necessarily like a club focused on design, chances are they're gonna need someone to design their flyers or their website and all that stuff. And perhaps you could be that person for them. There's also BI's guide on navigating design resources at Berkeley, which I think is super helpful if you're just getting started. Some events, BI always hosts the HDD conference. I know they just had the CMYK like design-a-thon, like literally like a few weekends ago. I think it was like this past weekend actually. But that's always a cool design-a-thon that happens. And I know Jacobs always has a speaker series for designers, so definitely really cool. And if you're ever curious about like what major you should be, honestly, it really does not matter. I keep using Kelly Hu as an example because she's like a great designer. I look up to her a lot. She's literally an EECS major who found out she really liked design. So it shows you can literally be any major. Because I know a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm cog sci sociology, but you can literally study anything because it doesn't matter as long as you kind of find the classes that work for you. I know Jacobs School of Design also has their design certificate. If you're interested in that, we have linked here. But yeah, it's honestly, Berkeley doesn't have a design major, which is annoying, but there's nothing we can really do about it other than the fact that use our other resources here on Berkeley campus. So some encouragement for those still feeling maybe discouraged about designing a portfolio, just remember the gap. And if you're just starting out on your design journey, that you're not alone, and practice will make better, not necessarily perfect, because I feel like no designer will ever say something's perfect. And don't be discouraged since we don't have a design major. Everyone's kind of running at their own pace, trying to do as much as they can, and don't feel discouraged about that. And honestly, keep creating. Think about the why of why we design certain things, and sometimes you just need to sit down and mess around. Some resources dump. There's a lot of cool books about UX research and why we kind of design certain things. They're really great. Coolfolios is essentially a really cool website of a bunch of different portfolios of design interns. So this is Kelly Hu. She's literally on here, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if I could reach it. Okay. Will this work? This is her portfolio. I feel like I need to turn off the lights for this to like show better, because hers is like. Apologies if it's like. Okay, sorry, it's a little dark, but it's better when there's no light coming in. This is her portfolio. I think it's very cool, very pretty. And essentially she has kind of her projects or intern projects as well as her case studies. So this is her Spotify one. This is her one for Instagram that she did. She's a part of a club here that does like design stuff as well. I think this is like a case study for Netflix. So when you click on this, it kind of breaks down what she did for them. This is a project overview, and breaks down like what tasks she did, like what redesigns. I think this one's a case study, if I remember correctly. But yeah, her website, her portfolio, I think is really dope. You can go more about it. But yeah, this is an example of a design portfolio. And she also has her about and resume right here at the top so that it's easy. Also, it's like a play on words. It says, who am I? Her last name's Hu, so like that's pretty clever. That's an example of like something you can do to show your creative flair. But yeah, I'm gonna turn back the lights because it's kind of dark. So yeah, I don't know how to get back. David, how do I get back to the presentation?
Might be weird. Well,
I'm just closing. We're almost done. Thank you. Okay, we're almost done. So yeah, that's a really cool website if you want to look at other design interns portfolios. like there's a lot of cool portfolios on there. I've definitely looked at it when I was redesigning mine. ADP List has a lot of resources if you're looking to reach out to actual designers in the industry. There's podcasts, newsletters, communities. There's a Discord and Slack channel for if you're looking for design people to talk to. These are the conferences. Config is actually in the summer. It occurred this past summer in SF. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, if you ever have any questions about design, feel free to reach out to any of the TAs. And are there any questions?